I want to also clarify the heart. Heart is unconditional love energy and this beautiful energy. And because I wonder if like people even, they might not even know what that even feels like because it's like roots so intertwined. So for me, it feels like a parent who loves their child. So you love your sweet boy. He's going to do things that are going to push the limits.
Oh, absolutely.
He's going to throw things. He's going to break things. He's going to push the limits.
Yeah.
You, as the parent, let's say, love him so much that sometimes it's kind of laugh, like, I knew he was going to do that, but you still have to set boundaries with it, right? But there's this still love there that no matter what he does, you're going to help him, support him, set boundaries for him, teach him whether it hurts you or not. You're going to have to do this for his, but there's this love that comes from it. You know, like just Jesus on the cross, when the story of the idea was like, forgive them for they not know what they do. The energy behind it is he loved so deeply that even though he was being hurt, he still loved them. And I think that's the heart energy, is that when you have this love for humanity, this connection, I think that's where oneness comes in. When you can see people from this place of oneness, from this connection, that we're all part of it, that we're all in it.
It's
there's
funny,
this
though,
love vibration.
because that cross story also shows the ego side of Jesus, of calling out.
I didn't want to get stuck on that.
Calling
I was
out,
like,
but-
oh no.
But let's go there, because
Yeah.
people put the person Jesus on this pedestal.
Yes.
When all the stories show you he was a person just like everyone else.
Oh, he
know,
was
and-
a
and-
troublemaker.
And so for him,
Yeah.
this is a story. Most of what we hear probably isn't real anyway. Let's be honest. We don't even, our history from 50 years ago, we don't have correct. So, but if you go based on the story, at the point where it says, God, why have you forsaken me? That's coming from a place of separation. That's coming from a place of
Yeah.
ego.
And that's the humanness. And that's why I think, like, people don't understand, like, he was against Jewish law. Like, he was an outcast. He made fun of, like, he caused trouble. He wasn't
yeah,
perfect. Him and Mary's relationship wasn't the best because she had a lot of fear around it. And so, but, you know, it goes back to that space of, like, at that point, you love so deeply and you see humanity in a different way. And I think operating from the heart, where, like, I know I have to do this for my own, like, this is my guidance in my own space. I think at that point it does trump. Do you know what I mean? Like the ego part that wants to belittle.
Well, I think you have to be pure. I mean, I know they use the pure of heart, but you know, that's our connection to who we really are, our spiritual side.
Essence, yeah.
So I mean, we can't. You really, you know, we try not to muck it up, but we do. You know, and that's when you start bringing in the brain and the analytical stuff, and you kind of mess with the heart. It's like, you know, when I wrote my book for the veterans, and it came to me that I wanted to help them, and then the inspiration came to me from Spirit about what I was going to do, and I was like, that would really be cool. I said, you know, I'll channel, veterans who have passed over to help veterans here. I said, that sounds great. And it's like, this is what I do. I said, this is going to be great. But then I said, I'm not a veteran. No one's going to believe it. And I was tearing myself up between my head and my heart. And finally, after like the third day, my heart was so filled with joy that even I knew that my analytical brain had already lost, but it was still going through the death movements because it was still trying to fight it, not to do it. It came up with every possible excuse for saying, you can't do this. You know how veterans groups are. They won't even let you talk about it. Blah, 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 blah. But in my heart, it was so strong for like 3 or 4 days, I couldn't sleep. It said, when you're going to give up on it, because you know already it's a go. So finally, when I finally accepted, I said, you know something, I'm going to do it because it's not about me. It's about helping them. If they want to complain to me afterwards, fine. I'll deal with it then. But at least the information will be out. It can help the veterans. So as soon as I said, it's not about me, it's about helping the vets, then the mind just got cut off and just had to,
Let's go with it.
Gave up to the heart.
And I would say that the mind didn't get cut off. I would say that that's where the ego got cut off.
Right.
Because what happens is, because I think the mind is just that planning structure tool that the body uses.
Do you think the mind is like the middleman?
Well, I think you can regulate it.
I think the mind's the organizing.
But he's right. You know, it was the ego thinking like, oh, they're going to come after me.
Because then the mind was doing the job. So when the mind was working with the ego, the mind just fills in the steps here, here, and here. So when you're looking at it from an ego perspective, the mind's saying, well, The ego's saying you can't do it because of this, and the mind's saying, "Oh, okay, this reason, this reason,
This reason you do an interview, they're going to say no. They're going to kick you out of this. They're going to.
So the mind's just doing its job, but it's identifying with the ego.
Right.
But
I
once you identified with the heart,
the heart was too strong.
And I'm sure once you identified with that and connected the mind to it, then the mind told you the steps. All right, to do
And
this
there
book,
you
you
As
do
soon as
this,
the heart
this,
said,
and that.
and it hit me, it was like, it's not about you, Joe. It's about helping them.
Yeah.
What it did was it took the ego and put it back in the toolbox.
And then the mind
It says we don't
connected
need
with
to.
the heart.
The mind
and then
connected
you-
with the heart and said, all right, let's go with it.
Yep, and then you had all the steps you needed to do.
Right.
And the beautiful thing is you created space for that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think people create enough space for it to happen. So like you said, you sleepless nights, that's creating space to work it out. And I think that's where the beautiful magic comes in. And you able to navigate through and you keep going in. And I think what we're doing is we're taking of everything that's going on in people's heads and their experience, and we're actually like pulling it out and like separating and saying like, okay, when you have this experience, this is what's happening, which I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to put in words for people to able to understand like the steps. And I think we're using our minds. I think we're using the heart, the ego. I think it's all coming out.
all
I
the
think
time.
it's-
But- And that situation was just so acute
Yes.
that because I was writing the other book on children and I stopped, and it was like all this happened in a matter of like 3 or 4 days. You know, after I read an article about a soldier getting killed in Afghanistan, it was on page 7. I said, wait a minute, we got to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll do a book because someone said, do what you're good at. So I decided to do that. But then the first day I go to write the book, they channel, when I do the books, they tell you, the process and things like that. The first thing they say is, Joe, we picked you because you weren't a veteran. Because we didn't want you having any
Experiences in that sense.
pre-existing experiences or, different
Which allows you to take the ego out of the writing.
Well, actually, there was it was the as soon as they told me that, I felt like the ego just took a wicked hit down. It was like, yep, you belong.
Pace.
You belong in the toolbox. It's like, yep,
We're gonna put you
because
to bed.
the heart was so strong.
Yeah.
It was.
And
one
don't
of
you
the few-
feel like you feel that seed in your stomach, like that pit in your stomach, like there's this fire that's like, it's got to come out.
It feels like it kind of feels like before you.
Now we're getting to the gut. That's
Yeah.
another.
Well,
Part of the-
before you give a speech or something like that, you get the butterflies. But then you get the heart. This went from my gut up to here.
Yes.
So
And
I don't
it's
know how
like
many chakras it took, and it was just like on fire, and it was fast. It happened within 72 hours.
I think it's important too to mention, because so often I get the question, Gladys, how did you know this is what you wanted to do? How did you know you wanted to write that book? How did you know you wanted to do this podcast? Or how did you know? And I get like a terrible answer, which is, I fell into it. And I think that's what happens. I think when we're creating space, and I think the important part is living mindfully and present. When it's time for you to move on and time for the next step, something shows up. And I think so many times the ego says, you've got to wait for this thing. Something's got to tell you. And I think the important part is live your life.
Yes.
Be
Keep walking.
joyful.
Keep walking the path.
Keep moving. And eventually it shows up.
And that's the difference, because the ego, if the ego is the part of you that sees itself as separate, the ego doesn't expect the universe to bring it to you. So it feels like it has to act to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have patience.
And it expends so much energy. I think that's why so many people are burnt. Like they're just fried.
Well, because
That's
they're
a
acting
really
trying
good
to
point.
get
That's
there.
an excellent point.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge point. I
They're
never even
spending
thought about it.
so much energy on
They get burnt
searching
out.
or looking that we got people that are just operating from an empty place, especially in the planet now.
They have to check where are they coming from here.
Yeah.
In their gut or their heart, instead of the ego.
Yep. And you
Why
can't-
am I doing this? And like I say, it's not a bad thing. It's like, some people say, oh, I want to take that promotion because I know it'll pay for my kids' education and stuff, and I'm going to push myself. So that's using the tool correctly. But on the other side, it can burn you out if you're going to be using it like that all the
Operating
time.
in that space, yeah.
Right.
Like any tool, you have it running all the time, it's going to burn out. It's going
Nobody
to start a
wants to do
fire.
anything
Exactly.
for 13 hours straight. Nobody wants to do anything for 14 hours straight, but people don't realize that we're operating in that space all the time, from like the second you fall asleep to the second you wake up. And again, if you're losing sleep over these things, it's more damaging. And then what happens is now you're making poor decisions, and like it almost like, I don't know if it fuels the ego, but it suppresses your energy or suppresses your ability to really see able to. So this is where the fog comes in,
Yeah.
right?
Suppresses that intuitive sense. And the heart is actually the most intuitive organ in the body. They've done tests, and
Yeah.
they've shown that the heart reacts first, then the gut, and then the brain. So out of intuitive stuff, like they'll show pictures to people that would elicit either a fear response or a joy response, and before the picture actually changes, the heart's responding to what's going to happen next. They also, I read another study about solar flares once, and they said that the body was reacting to the solar flare. The heart was going first, then the gut, and then the brain. The heart was reacting when the solar flare happened before the signal was even picked up by our
Wow.
equipment.
And we don't mean the heart, the organ. We mean the heart energy.
Both.
But
Fields.
the organ's connected.
Yeah.
So
Right,
it's
right.
actually,
It can be like a mechanism to read
Yep.
the heart energy.
There's a modality called heart bath, and through that, it's scientifically proven that the messages that go from the heart to the brain are a lot faster than the messages that go from the brain to the heart. Meaning, when you've got this idea, it goes here, and you're like, we'll do this. But when you're starting to operate here, maybe from the fear place or whatever, it's slower to get to the heart because it's not truth.
and we should say that within this, used for different things, but there actually are, so your brain's made up of neurons, and the most is in the brain. The second most is in the gut. The gut has its own
Yeah.
neurons, and then the heart has the least amount. But there actually are those same triggers that exist in these three organs, which is why you have people have the gut feeling. They feel it in the heart, and then the
And you know what's so funny
thoughts.
now? I've been following a lot of bloggers in health, and there's so much more studies about gut health now
Yep.
and taking care of the gut and being in the space. It's like we've been going through phases. We went through heart stuff, then we went through brain stuff, and now there's like all this science about how the food you're eating, the experiences you're having affect the gut, which will in turn affect the brain and its quality of life.
Well,
per
like you
se.
say, gut instinct. That's been going back since the beginning of time. They got a gut instinct, and it's us using psychic awareness.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to use the make it a woo-woo
I think
word,
that's
but
that's the survival. I
Yeah.
think when you have that gut instinct,
yeah.
it's usually like a survival thing, like,
But I think over time, it's also been sent out and used for recon.
oh yeah, I'm sure.
And we're
You know
seeing
what I mean? Before you get into that type of thing, and it might be to read people
Yep.
to see if they're friend or foe. And as we matured, I think we developed it to the point where we can use it for communication through readings, psychic readings, and mediumship.
We're seeing too now, if you notice, the body, the physical shell, screaming out for attention. Because we're seeing a lot more gut problems.
Yeah.
Irritable bowel, diverticulitis, colon stuff. Like if you notice, like we're seeing more of it. It seems like there's these waves, right? And so it's almost like that universal part is teaching how to people like focus here. Like here is where that gut is. Like it's just shifting in that space.
If they're energy centers within your body, right? So if our consciousness is expanding and all these new thoughts and ideas are expanding our consciousness, at some point the other energy centers have to line up with that
Absolutely.
expansion. And so that's why the heart's calling out, the gut's calling out, because all the energy needs to be in sync for us to actually operate at this level of consciousness.
So I think it's important
And
for
when
people to know.
I'm sorry, when something's out of sync, where does it show up?
Absolutely, the
Distress.
physical body.
Right.
And I think it's important for people to know that now and not feel ashamed or powerless to illnesses that are showing up. But again, where I go back to, if you can befriend it, if you can sit with it and ask it, like, what is it teaching you? Like, what do you need to know? Like, what are you ignoring about the intuitive part? Because your emotional guidance system is what? Your gut, your heart,
Yep.
your brain, your spirit working in, and it's all operating. It all coincides. But I feel like we live in a world right now where there's a lot of people who are separate. They're operating here and their physical body is screaming, and we're moving and trying to like pull it together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And operating from both. So more illness is coming up, but it's not something that we should feel powerless and angry about. But if you can accept it and saying, okay, this is what's going on with me, what can I learn from it?
I think
How can I move through it?
there's so much electronic stimulation of the brain, with all the new devices we have, that's kind of like we haven't given attention to the other parts of our body.
Yeah.
And I think they're starting to say, hey, what about us? Because like you said, there's a balance.
Yeah.
It's got to be a balance. Because it's going to affect the emotions. If your
Definitely.
head's always over here,
in a yucky place.
Well, even just being distracted all the time by
Yeah.
24/7 looking at your phone and pictures and stimulus, and you're just kind of like zoning out literally. The rest of your body can't really be in tune to help you with the tools that you brought with it. It brought,
And
to
when
this
you've got all
environment.
the signals going on here, you're not going to pick up on these.
Exactly.
One thing that's
It's like an
important.
overload.
Yeah.
And one thing that's important to remember is words, we mostly think in words are generated up here. So the signals coming from your gut and your heart aren't going to come through as words. It's going to be a feeling.
Right.
And so if you're so tuned into all the words and thoughts going through your head, you're going to miss out on all these signals coming.
Yeah. It's funny when we think about like
That's
words
huge.
and how we're conditioning our body, right? And how we're conditioned just from children growing up. And I don't know how this happened, but Dr. Phil was on in my house one day and I never see it, but
I
there
don't know
was
how
this.
it happened. Somehow,
It's just
somehow
fun.
someone was in my house.
Well, oh,
and
you know
turned
what?
on-
Someone broke in
Oh, you know
and put
what?
that channel on.
My mom had broke her ankle. She was home that day.
Okay.
She was home and it was on TV. And it was funny because he was talking to a girl who had such bad body image of herself, body dysmorphia. And he said, he put up on there like some information. I tried to find it so I could like quote the exact amount. But he said like something like, you can talk, let's say like 200 words a minute, but you can think like 2,000. And what people don't realize is that ego will feed that negative energy, that negative self-talk if you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
That energy now affects your physical body, now affects your external world, law of attraction, what goes in comes out, right? And so if we can get to the root of it and really get that under control, it really can shift by leaps and bounds.
Yeah. It's a focus, and if
And
you,
I think that's the how. Like, I think that's what people need to know too, is like the how to navigate in that space.
And that's why they talk about the road to happiness and pure and real joy is disengaging from the ego.
and that's
Well-
another reason why meditation is so powerful.
Powerful.
Because meditation, not only do your thoughts slow down, but you also become more aware of your body.
And it's funny because
breathing.
I can almost feel people rolling their eyes with meditation.
I know people, you
And
say it
I
all
think
the time.
but I swear, like people don't realize they think they've got to clear their mind.
Yeah.
But for me, for meditation, it's being aware of what's on my mind.
Exactly.
What am I focused on?
Seeing the actual thoughts that are coming
And
in.
also problem solving. Like when I can sit with something and go further, like what's the worst case scenario? Like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, what's the best thing that can happen? When I give it space, like you did when you were sorting out being writing the book on the veterans, you are literally sitting with it, sorting it out in that space, like at night,
That's not a
cycling
battle.
about it. Right, and that's the
And
thing
don't-
is we don't create enough space for that. That's what meditation can be.
And don't think that the answers come during the meditation.
They don't.
No, the meditation puts you in a vibrational place to receive the answers after.
I'm always either brushing my teeth
Yep.
and all of a sudden it comes, or taking a shower and then
that's-
all of a
It
sudden
always
it
comes
comes.
in the bathroom.
Well,
If I could just live in the
Well, that's
bathroom, I would
amazing.
be
Would be
inspired all the
amazing.
time.
That's the whole point, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't meditate because I keep thinking blah blah blah." Meditation does not have to be quiet, cross legs in a a room by yourself.
Yeah.
If you garden or if you paint or you do anything creative, that's meditation. I mean, I used to paint and have the Red Sox on, and all of a sudden it's the 8th inning.
Yeah.
Time just disappears. So that's a form of meditation, and that's where you're going to get the inspiration.
Yeah.
You're getting in the shower or you're brushing your teeth. Why? Because you're on automatic
created
every
the
day.
space, yeah.
It's just that your mind is blanked out because you're going through your automatic.
Yep.
So
The mind is actually
is
doing the
occupied.
busy work. That's why
It's occupied with a habit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're open to do something else. It's like daydreaming, active daydreaming.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's really self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like you're
Right.
hypnotizing yourself when you lose track of time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think it's important to note too that meditation doesn't have to be an hour. I think some people think they have to create an hour. 5 minutes of focused on a goal, 5 minutes of focused on the energy of freedom or the feeling of love or whatever that is. 5 minutes every day can be so much more powerful than an hour a few times a week.
Right. And it'll lower your blood pressure.
Yep.
It can do a lot of things, just 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
And Insight Timer, just so you know, you can download the app. It has an incredible meditation app that can set the time for you. It'll set the tones for you. And you can follow me on there in my podcast,
And we'll
Gladys
be on-
Allen.
and this show will be on there soon too.
But
So
the thing is that there are tools that are already out there. Like you don't even have to
I think what about-
find more. It's
I have-
already there for free.
I have I think it's casual meditation or something like that, and every once in a while I'll hear bong, and I'll be like, where the hell did that come from?
Is it reminding you?
Yes, it reminded me. It's a meditation reminder,
Yeah.
and it's on one of my pads, and I'm like, was that on my phone? Was that on here? And it was just like, it's one of the bowls. It goes bong.
And that's cool too, because out of sight, out of mind. If you set yourself up for success in advance, set a timer, and these apps, will remind you, they'll reach out to you for you to go do it. And I think also too is not being so rigid that you feel like every morning at 7:00 you have to do this. And if you don't do it at 7, that's it, it's out the window. Because guess what? You might have to get up and out of the house earlier.
Yep.
It's 8:00, you might be out with friends that night. And then you're in that space of like, oh, I haven't meditated, then it's gone. And then guess what? You don't go back. Go back
And you
to
feel
it.
guilty, and
So-
the ego comes in.
Flexible, right?
Beats you up.
Flexibility is fun.
hi everybody. If you like what you watch, please subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. And check out our website at alwaysconsiderthesource.com.
Hey, if you want us to come out to your location and do a live setup, we'd love to do that. Continue to send in your questions, and we look forward to interacting with you.
And remember, always consider the source.